Let me start by saying this gently because I know life has been loud, demanding, and unrelenting. You've been surviving, showing up, holding it together with faith and grit, but somewhere along the way, your days started running you instead of you leading them. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep, but because your life feels scattered. Your prayers are sincere, but your patterns are chaotic. You keep asking God for clarity while living in constant confusion. This is not about condemnation. It's a wake-up call wrapped in compassion. Organization is not about perfection. It's about stewardship. When your life is disorganized, your purpose leaks. When your schedule is scattered, your peace bleeds out. This moment is God tapping you on the shoulder and saying it's time to gather yourself, align yourself, and take responsibility for the life you've been praying for. There comes a point where you have to stop blaming the season, the people, the delays, and the disappointments, and look yourself in the mirror with honesty and grace. Taking responsibility for the state of your life does not mean you caused every wound, but it does mean you are accountable for your healing. You cannot keep asking for a new chapter while refusing to organize the pages you're already standing on. Responsibility is not heavy when you understand it gives you power. The moment you say, "This is my life and I will steward it well," something shifts internally. You stop waiting to be rescued and start partnering with God in the rebuilding process. You recognize that disorder is not just external, it's often internal, showing up as procrastination, avoidance, and emotional overwhelm. When your life lacks structure, your emotions take over the driver's seat. You react instead of respond. You drift instead of decide. Responsibility calls you back into alignment. It says, "I may not control what happened to me, but I will control what happens next." It looks like owning your mornings instead of rolling into the day unprepared. It looks like setting boundaries instead of explaining your burnout. It looks like admitting that some of the chaos you're praying against is the result of habits you refuse to confront. And that realization is not meant to shame you, it's meant to awaken you. Taking responsibility requires courage because it strips you of excuses. It asks you to evaluate how you manage your time, your energy, your money, and your focus. It forces you to admit that being busy is not the same as being productive, and being tired is not the same as being fulfilled. When you take responsibility, you stop romanticizing struggle and start organizing solutions. You begin to see that God is not withholding answers. He is waiting for you to prepare the space to receive them. Responsibility also means accepting that organization is an act of faith. You organize not because everything is perfect, but because you believe order will make room for growth. You plan because you trust tomorrow exists. You clean up because you expect increase. Disorganization keeps you emotionally reactive, but responsibility anchors you spiritually. It steadies you enough to hear God clearly and act decisively. This is where change becomes practical. You stop saying one day and start saying today. You stop expecting feelings to lead you and allow decisions to ground you. Responsibility doesn't wait for confidence, it creates it. Each small act of order reinforces your belief that you are capable, equipped, and worthy of a life that reflects intention rather than survival. And as you begin to take responsibility, you will notice that clarity follows action, peace follows structure, and purpose begins to emerge from the very places you once avoided, because responsibility is the doorway to transformation. And once you step through it, there is no going back to living scattered, small, or unaware of the power you carry. Even now, in this moment, choosing to get your life in order right here, right now. You cannot organize your life if your mind is overcrowded and your heart is overloaded. Emotional and mental clutter is sneaky because it doesn't always look messy on the outside. You can smile, function, even succeed while internally carrying unresolved pain, unspoken resentment, constant worry, and recycled thoughts that drain your energy. You keep replaying conversations that already ended, reliving mistakes God already forgave, carrying expectations that were never yours to hold. And every time you try to move forward, you feel heavy, distracted, and unmotivated, not because you are lazy, but because your inner world is cluttered. Mental clutter shows up as overthinking, second guessing yourself, and constantly questioning your worth. It keeps you busy in your head but stuck in your life. Emotional clutter shows up as bitterness you've spiritualized, grief you've rushed past, and disappointments you've buried instead of healed. You say you're fine, but your reactions say otherwise. You snap easily, withdraw suddenly, and feel overwhelmed by simple decisions. That is not a personality flaw, that is clutter. If you don't intentionally remove what no longer serves you, it will silently control you. You cannot hear God clearly when your mind is loud with fear. You cannot walk in purpose when your heart is crowded with wounds. Decluttering your inner life requires honesty before it requires effort. You have to be willing to name what hurts, admit what drained you, and acknowledge what you've been avoiding. Healing does not happen in denial. It happens in awareness. Removing emotional clutter means giving yourself permission to release what you keep holding onto out of habit, loyalty, or fear. Some thoughts have expired, but you keep feeding them. Some relationships have shifted, but you keep trying to resurrect the old version. Some seasons ended, but you keep mentally living there. Letting go does not mean it didn't matter. It means you refuse to let it manage your future. You don't have to carry every memory, every offense, every disappointment into your next chapter. Mental organization looks like training your thoughts instead of trusting every one of them. Just because a thought enters your mind does not mean it deserves residency. You have to ask yourself, is this thought producing peace or pressure, clarity or confusion, faith or fear? If it's not aligned with where God is taking you, it doesn't get to stay. Clearing mental clutter is a daily practice of choosing truth over familiarity. Emotional decluttering also requires boundaries, not just with people, but with your own patterns. You cannot keep revisiting places God already delivered you from emotionally. You cannot keep reopening wounds just to prove they still hurt. Healing sometimes looks like closing doors gently but firmly and refusing to entertain conversations that reopen pain you're supposed to be healed from. As you begin to clear emotional and mental clutter, you'll notice a shift in your energy. You won't feel as reactive. You won't feel as overwhelmed. Decisions will come easier because your mind is no longer crowded with noise. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of order within. And when your inner world is organized, your outer life begins to follow. This process may feel uncomfortable because clutter feels familiar. Chaos can become normal when you've lived in it long enough, but clarity is worth the discomfort. Freedom is worth the honesty. You were never meant to carry everything you picked up along the way. Some things were lessons, not luggage. And as you release emotional weight and mental noise, you create space for wisdom, direction, and peace to settle in, space where you can finally breathe, think clearly, and move forward without being pulled backward by what no longer belongs in your life. Discipline is often misunderstood because we associate it with restriction instead of respect. But discipline is not punishment. It is permission to become who you said you wanted to be. When you lack discipline, you constantly negotiate with yourself, promising tomorrow what you refuse to do today. You say you want peace, but your routines invite chaos. You say you want growth, but your habits stay the same. Discipline is the language your future understands. It is how you tell your life that you matter enough to be consistent. Self-respect shows up long before applause does. It shows up when nobody is watching and you still keep your word to yourself. When you get up when you said you would, when you stop scrolling and start building, when you choose rest instead of burnout and order instead of excuses. Discipline is not about being hard on yourself. It's about being honest with yourself. It's realizing that love without structure becomes neglect, even self-love. Many people are waiting to feel inspired before they change, but discipline teaches you to move even when your feelings are silent. Feelings fluctuate, but discipline stabilizes. There will be days you don't feel like praying, organizing, planning, or showing up, and discipline steps in and says, we do this anyway. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. That consistency builds confidence. Confidence is not born from hype, it's born from evidence. And discipline creates evidence every time you follow through. A lack of discipline slowly erodes your self-trust. Each broken promise to yourself reinforces the belief that you cannot rely on you. That's why disorder feels heavy. It's not just the mess, it's the disappointment you feel toward yourself every time you walk past what you said you would fix. Discipline restores that trust. It rebuilds the relationship you have with yourself. It tells your spirit that you are safe in your own hands. Discipline also teaches you boundaries. You begin to recognize what drains you and what develops you. You stop giving your best energy to distractions and leftovers to your destiny. You start saying no without guilt and yes with intention. That is self-respect in action. You don't need external validation when you internally know you're honoring your values. When you respect yourself, you don't sabotage your progress for temporary comfort. You don't keep returning to habits that keep you stuck just because they feel familiar. Discipline asks you to delay gratification for long-term freedom. It asks you to choose alignment over impulse. That choice, repeated daily, reshapes your life quietly but powerfully. Discipline is not about doing everything perfectly. It's about doing the important things consistently. It's showing up even when progress feels slow. It's cleaning up even when nobody will notice. It's planning even when the future feels uncertain. Discipline is faith with work boots on. It says, I believe change is possible, so I will act like it. You don't rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your discipline. Your prayers gain power when your patterns agree with them. When your daily structure reflects your deepest desires, your life starts to feel less chaotic and more intentional. Discipline creates rhythm, and rhythm creates peace. The reason discipline feels uncomfortable at first is because chaos has been coddling you. Chaos lets you avoid accountability. Discipline invites you into ownership, and ownership is where growth lives. When you begin to discipline your time, your thoughts, your reactions, and your environment, you stop feeling like life is happening to you and start feeling like you are participating in your own transformation. This is not about becoming rigid or robotic. It's about becoming reliable to yourself, reliable to your purpose. Reliable in the small things that no one celebrates, but everything depends on. Discipline is how you say to yourself, my life deserves care. My future deserves effort, and I am worth the consistency it takes to get there. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop expecting some lightning bolt of inspiration to magically fix your life. Motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes like the weather. Some days you feel it. Some days you don't, and if you rely on it, you will never finish what you started. Structure, on the other hand, is reliable. Structure doesn't ask how you feel. It simply exists to support your goals, your purpose, and your peace. You have to choose structure, even when motivation feels absent. Because your future does not wait for your feelings. Waiting for motivation is like waiting for the tide to carry you to shore instead of swimming with intent. Motivation will never discipline your schedule. Motivation will never remind you to prioritize. Motivation will never call you back when you wander into distraction. Structure does. Structure is the framework that holds your life together when your emotions try to tear it apart. And once you learn to work with structure, you realize that consistency becomes far more powerful than bursts of inspiration. Choosing structure looks like creating routines and following them. It looks like blocking time for what matters most, even when you'd rather scroll, chat, or procrastinate. It looks like writing down your goals and reviewing them daily, not waiting for a sudden feeling of, I'm ready. Structure also teaches you to anticipate challenges instead of being surprised by them. When you plan, organize, and act intentionally, you stop reacting to chaos and start creating order. Structure forces you to prioritize. It asks you to distinguish between urgent and important. It asks you to align your actions with your purpose rather than your impulses. Many people think they are busy when in reality they are overwhelmed by distractions. Being busy is not the same as being productive. Structure helps you focus on what moves your life forward, not what simply keeps you occupied. Structure also protects your mental and emotional energy. When you have routines, boundaries, and systems, you don't waste precious bandwidth deciding what to do next. You don't fall prey to indecision or self-doubt because your day is mapped out with intention. Structure creates space for clarity, peace, and focus. And when you experience that, motivation is no longer a requirement because your life is already moving in the direction you want it to go. The paradox is that choosing structure can feel restrictive at first, but it is actually liberating. It frees you from chaos, distraction, and the constant burden of trying to remember everything. It gives you control over your time and energy, which are your most valuable resources. Structure allows you to take deliberate steps toward your goals instead of wandering aimlessly, hoping things will somehow fall into place. When you stop waiting for motivation, you reclaim your power. You decide that your actions will not be dependent on how you feel, but on what you know you must do. Motivation may light a spark, but structure keeps the fire burning. And once you adopt this mindset, you begin to see that life does not require perfect circumstances. It requires consistent, intentional action. Even when your heart is unsure and your feelings are absent, structure is a spiritual and practical principle. It honors the life God has given you. It respects the gifts, time, and opportunities in front of you. And when you begin to embrace it, you will notice that you feel less scattered, less reactive, and more capable of navigating challenges with confidence. Structure doesn't just organize your schedule, it organizes your life, your thoughts, and your energy, creating a foundation where purpose, peace, and productivity can finally flourish. You must realize that the moment you choose structure, you take back authority over your life. You no longer wait for permission, inspiration, or ideal circumstances. You act. And that action sets the stage for every blessing, every goal, and every breakthrough you've been praying for. Consistency grounded in structure becomes the bridge between where you are and where you are meant to go. Organize your priorities before God organizes your blessings. So often we pray and dream, asking for breakthroughs, promotions, or divine favor, but we haven't taken the time to put our own house in order. There's a principle at work. God blesses what is already aligned, prepared, and ready to receive. You cannot expect increase in areas where disorder is tolerated. Blessings don't flow into chaos, they settle into structure, clarity, and readiness. If you are serious about seeing transformation, you must first evaluate your priorities because they determine where your focus, energy, and actions flow. Prioritizing begins with clarity about what truly matters. Many people spend their time reacting to distractions, emergencies, and other people's agendas, and they wonder why their prayers seem unanswered. When you organize your priorities, you decide what deserves your time, energy, and attention. You distinguish between the urgent and the important because not everything that demands your energy deserves it. Your blessings are waiting, but you have to clear the path so they can reach you. Alignment between your life and your prayers is critical. God's favor is not arbitrary. It responds to stewardship. If you are asking for financial increase, but your spending is disorganized and impulsive, you create a barrier. If you desire peace, but your relationships are toxic and unresolved, you block the flow of what you seek. Organization in your priorities demonstrates readiness, faithfulness, and responsibility. It signals that you are prepared to handle more. Organizing your priorities also means saying no to what distracts or diminishes you. Every time you agree to something that doesn't align with your purpose, you dilute your capacity to receive what truly matters. Boundaries are not selfish. They are strategic. They protect your energy and preserve the space for your growth and breakthroughs. Blessings require space to manifest, and that space is created by intentional choices about what occupies your life. Spiritual alignment accompanies practical alignment. You cannot expect God to bless a heart or life that is divided, distracted, or disorganized. Daily disciplines like prayer, reflection, planning, and intentional action are not optional. They are preparatory steps that ready you to receive. Priorities reflect your values, and your values reflect your faith. If your life is organized according to what matters most, then blessings have a clear path to manifest. Finally, organizing your priorities fosters focus and consistency. When you know what matters most, you are no longer swayed by every new idea, trend, or distraction. You learn to invest your time, energy, and resources where they will multiply. Focused effort produces results. Prioritized action produces momentum. And momentum attracts the favor and opportunities you have been seeking. God honors preparation, not just prayers, and blessings follow the life that has been intentionally aligned with purpose, faith, and clarity. When you take this step, you begin to notice the difference immediately. You feel lighter, more confident, and more capable. Decisions become easier, stress decreases, and your faith grows stronger because you are no longer praying for things you are not prepared to receive. Organization in your priorities is not about rigidity. It's about readiness. It's about creating a life where your prayers and God's promises intersect seamlessly, producing results that are sustainable, fulfilling, and aligned with your highest calling. Your blessings are already on their way, but they need a landing place. That landing place is your organized life, your disciplined mind, your prepared heart, and your prioritized actions. Until you create that space, the increase you seek will remain stalled. When you step into intentionality and structure, you are no longer waiting on luck, chance, or fleeting motivation. You are actively partnering with God to create a life that can fully receive, steward, and celebrate the abundance that is meant for you. Consistency will change what passion could not. Passion is powerful. It lights fire under your dreams and excites your soul, but passion alone is unreliable. It comes in waves, surges, and sudden bursts, often fading when life gets hard, when challenges appear, or when progress feels slow. Consistency, however, is steady, dependable, and transformative. It does the work even when the spark feels dim, the energy feels low, and the excitement feels distant. Consistency is what turns small actions into monumental results over time. Many people mistake passion for progress. They chase feelings of inspiration, waiting for enthusiasm to show up before they act. And when that feeling fades, so does their effort. Consistency does not depend on emotion. It depends on commitment. It is the daily practice of showing up for yourself, your purpose, and your calling even when it feels uncomfortable. Consistency is faith in action, proving to yourself that your life matters enough to be nurtured through routine, discipline, and persistent effort. Consistency builds momentum. Every small step repeated over time compounds into massive change. Writing every day, praying every day, planning every day, working toward your goals every day. These habits, though simple, are more powerful than sporadic bursts of effort fueled only by passion. While passion ignites the initial desire, consistency keeps the flame alive and ensures that your vision becomes reality. Without it, even the greatest ideas, the deepest prayers, and the strongest dreams can remain unrealized. Consistency also develops resilience. Life will inevitably throw obstacles, distractions, and delays your way. Passion often falters under pressure, but consistent action adapts, persists, and endures. It teaches you patience, teaches you to trust the process, and shows you that greatness is not always dramatic. It is often quiet, persistent, and intentional. When you commit to being consistent, you are choosing to prioritize long-term growth over temporary comfort. Your consistency also strengthens your character. It trains you to honor your commitments even when no one is watching. It proves that you are reliable to yourself, which builds self-trust, the foundation of personal power and spiritual authority. When your actions align with your intentions day after day, you stop feeling stuck, uncertain, or overwhelmed. Instead, you begin to embody the person capable of handling the responsibilities and blessings you have been seeking. Consistency amplifies every other principle in life. Discipline becomes meaningful, structure becomes effective, priorities become aligned, and even faith becomes more tangible when paired with consistent effort. It is the quiet, relentless practice that creates results passion alone cannot produce. Dreams do not manifest simply because you feel them. They manifest because you nurture them consistently with thought, action, and intentionality. The beauty of consistency is that it works quietly, almost invisibly, until suddenly you look back and realize how far you have come. The small, repetitive actions that seemed insignificant accumulate into visible, undeniable progress. Your prayers, your efforts, your choices, they all compound, showing you that transformation is not instantaneous, but inevitable when effort is steady and intentional. Consistency demands courage because it often requires showing up even when the outcome is uncertain. It asks you to trust in the process and in God's timing while continuing to act faithfully. It teaches you to value persistence over perfection, effort over emotion, and long-term vision over temporary feelings. Consistency is the bridge between desire and fulfillment, between prayer and provision, between vision and reality. When you embrace consistency, you stop relying solely on motivation, passion, or circumstance. You step into a rhythm that honors your purpose and positions you for breakthroughs. You realize that lasting change is not dramatic, it is deliberate. It is the repeated, intentional choices you make every day that transform your life. Consistency is the unseen force that turns dreams into results, ideas into achievements, and faith into tangible blessings, ensuring that your life does not merely drift, but moves steadily toward the destiny you were created to fulfill.